Good afternoon. Welcome to the noon briefing. On Ethiopia, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that Emergency Relief Coordinator Martin Griffiths has arrived today in the Tigray region on a UN Humanitarian Air Service flight. He visited a site for internally displaced people and heard from people affected by the crisis. Mr. Griffiths was also briefed by humanitarian partners in Mekelle on the challenges they face. According to our humanitarian partners, an estimated 5.2 million people need assistance in Tigray. Also today, the UN Children's Fund said that it estimates that more than 100,000 children in Tigray could suffer from life-threatening severe acute malnutrition in the next 12 months. This is a tenfold increase compared to the average annual caseload. UNICEF warned that this malnutrition crisis is taking place amid extensive, systematic damage to the food, health, nutrition, water, and sanitation systems and services that children and their families depend on for their survival. The risk of disease outbreak is high, particularly in the overcrowded, unsanitary sites hosting displaced families. Turning to Afghanistan, in a statement, the United Nations in the country condemned in the strongest terms today the attack on our main compound in Herat, in which an Afghan police guard was killed and others injured. No UN personnel were hurt in the incident. The UN mission in Afghanistan said that the attack targeting entrances with rocket-propelled grenades and gunfire of the clearly marked UN facility was carried out by anti-government elements. Today, the area around Herat, where the compound is located, witnessed fighting between the Taliban and government forces. The UN Secretary General's Special Representative for Afghanistan and the head of the mission in the country, Deborah Lyons, said that the attack is deplorable. She stressed that the perpetrators must be identified and brought to account. Ms. Lyons added that our first thoughts are with the family of the officer killed, and she wished a speedy recovery to those injured. Attacks against civilian UN personnel in compounds are prohibited under international law and may amount to war crimes. The UN mission in Afghanistan expressed its gratitude to the Afghan Directorate of Protection Services officers who defended the compound from the attackers. Also today in a tweet, the UN mission said that it is concerned by escalating violence in and around Kandahar amidst ongoing Taliban attacks on the city. The UN mission said that there are credible reports of scores of civilians killed and that it is working to establish facts on civilian harm. Also in Afghanistan, our humanitarian colleagues today warned of the alarming increase in civilian casualties and injuries, including women and children in Kandahar. Fighting has also been reported in Nangarhar province and in new areas in the northeast province of Kunar, where 20,000 people were displaced. We, along with our partners, are assessing needs in these regions. In Kandahar last week, some 1,800 internally displaced people received assistance such as food and relief items. In Kunar, urgent needs include food, water, shelter, and health services. Our humanitarian colleagues also said that scores of people have died following severe flooding in the hard-to-reach eastern Kamdesh district. The Afghan Red Crescent Society, the only organization with access to Kamdesh, is sending a mobile health team and will provide temporary shelter. The UN is negotiating access with a non-state armed group and will provide medical supplies, food, and relief items. Afghan authorities will mobilize additional support from Kabul. Humanitarian partners in Afghanistan need $1.3 billion to help nearly 16 million people in 2021, but only 38% of the required funding has been received to date. The UN support mission in Libya welcomed the official opening of the coastal road in the presence of the UN mission, which happened today. The mission congratulates the Libyan people, national and local authorities, institution, and stakeholders involved, especially the role of the 5+5 Joint Military Commission in this landmark and historic achievement. The mission acknowledges the support provided by the Presidency Council and the Government of National Unity under the leadership of the Prime Minister in this regard. Jan Kubish, the Special Envoy for Libya, hailed the ongoing efforts and achievements of the 5+5 Joint Military Commission and its subcommittees for laying foundations for durable peace in Libya. The opening of the coastal road is another step in strengthening peace, security, and stability in the country and in the unification of its institutions, said the Special Envoy. The mission's full statement is online. The acting head of the Office of the Special Envoy for Yemen, Muin Shrem, concluded yesterday a 2-day visit to Saudi Arabia, during which he met with Yemeni Vice President Ali Mohsen and Prime Minister Ma'in Abdul Malik, as well as other senior Yemeni officials. He also met with U.S. Special Envoy Timothy Letterking and other diplomats working on the file. Mr. Shrem discussed the urgent need to agree on the cessation of all forms of military operations in Yemen and across the border. He reiterated the importance of taking urgent humanitarian and economic measures to alleviate the suffering of the people of Yemen. That, in turn, would create a conducive environment to resume the long-awaited, inclusive, and Yemeni-led political process under UN auspices. Turning to Syria, the UN is very concerned about reports of civilian casualties and displacement due to hostilities in Daraa al-Balad and the risk of further escalation. We are monitoring the situation with concern, including reports of a period of relative calm today as discussions to reach a local agreement were underway. But the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights has documented the death of 8 civilians, including a woman and 4 children, with another 6 civilians, including 2 children, wounded between the 27th and the 29th of July. The UN has also confirmed the displacement of 2,500 people due to violence and insecurity over the last 72 hours, and we have received reports of the displacement of over 10,000 people. UN and humanitarian partners are working to scale up the humanitarian response to people in need in Daraa al-Balad and in the areas of temporary displacement. We reiterate the Secretary General's call for a nationwide ceasefire and urge all parties to de-escalate the situation and ensure the protection of civilians and civilian infrastructure in line with their obligations under international humanitarian law. The UN further calls upon parties to ensure safe, sustained, and unimpeded access to all in need. From Myanmar, the UN country team there, continues to call for the protection of civilians as reports of breaches of human rights continue, including extrajudicial killings, arbitrary detention, torture, ill treatment, and enforced disappearances. Since the military takeover nearly 6 months ago, the violence carried out by security forces has left at least 930 civilians dead, including women and children, and thousands more people injured. The UN in Myanmar calls for accountability to bring the perpetrators to justice. In the Philippines, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that, as of yesterday, at least 38,000 people have been displaced by floods following monsoon rains. The UN and our humanitarian partners stand ready to support the response if requested. And in Brazil, more than 1.5 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines provided through the COVAX facility were delivered yesterday. More than 400,000 additional doses are expected to arrive later today. This brings the total number of vaccines received through COVAX in Brazil to nearly 10 million. The UN team, led by resident coordinator Sylvia Rux, continues to support authorities to address the impacts of the pandemic. While more than 80% of municipal public schools continue with remote learning, several UN entities, including UNICEF, UNESCO, and the World Health Organization, are advocating for the safe reopening of public schools in the country. Through the Joint Sustainable Development Goals Fund, UNICEF has helped to launch an early childhood care campaign to support national efforts. This includes the monitoring of pregnant women and children up to 6 years of age in nearly 3,000 municipalities. For its part, the IOM has conducted over 400 medical consultations for Venezuelan refugees and migrants in the Amazon region with mobile health units. UN Women, together with indigenous organizations, is providing emergency care, including basic items for disease prevention and food security in the Amazon. In a new report, the World Food Programme and the Food and Agriculture Organization say that in the next 4 months, conflict, the pandemic, and the climate crisis are likely to increase hunger in 23 countries. Ethiopia and Madagascar are the world's newest highest alert hunger hotspots, according to the report. The highest alert list also includes South Sudan, Yemen, and northern Nigeria. In some areas of these countries, significant numbers of people are at risk of falling into famine. The report flags other countries where life-threatening hunger is on the rise. They include Afghanistan, Burkina Faso, the Central African Republic, Colombia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Haiti, Honduras, Sudan, and Syria. WFP and FAO say that humanitarian action is urgently needed to prevent hunger, famine, and death in all 23 hotspots. Country-specific recommendations are included in the report, which is available online. And in his message to mark the Day Against Trafficking in Persons, the Secretary General calls on governments to take urgent steps to strengthen prevention, support victims, and bring perpetrators of trafficking to justice. Half of the victims in low-income countries are children, the Secretary General says. Trafficking of women and girls for sexual exploitation continues to be one of the most widespread forms of human trafficking, he adds. In our fight to end and prevent this terrible crime, the Secretary General concludes, the UN is committed to listening and responding to the voices of victims and survivors of human trafficking, ensuring their rights and dignity. Also on the topic of human trafficking, the UN Refugee Agency warned today of life-threatening gaps in the assistance provided to victims of trafficking along different routes within the Sahel and East Africa. Survivors speak of sexual abuse and rape, kidnappings for ransom, being left to die in the desert, and being subjected to physical and psychological torture. UNHCR and its partners have stepped up their efforts to identify those in need and to help them access asylum procedures and other safety mechanisms. However, the agency says that critical services to protect vulnerable people on the move are still woefully lacking. Victims of trafficking have practically no one to turn to for help along these routes, they say. UNHCR calls for more sustained efforts to address the root causes of forced displacement. The agency also calls for the expansion of safe and legal pathways for refugees, which are instrumental to providing viable alternatives to human smuggling and trafficking. And today is also the International Day of Friendship. The day was proclaimed in 2011 by the General Assembly with the idea that friendship between peoples, countries, cultures, and individuals can inspire peace efforts and build bridges between communities. And on Monday at 12:30, there will be a hybrid press briefing here by the Permanent Representative of India and the President of the Security Council for the month of August, Ambassador T.S. Tirumurti. He will brief you on the Security Council's program of work for the month. Sorry about that. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Edie.
Thank you, Ari. Two follow-ups. First, on Tigray, can you please put in a request, I'm sure on behalf of all of us, for Martin Griffiths to brief us after his trip to Tigray?
Yes, duly noted.
And secondly, on Libya, I wasn't quite clear after listening to you whether the coastal road has actually reopened. Is traffic actually flowing on the road for the first time?
All we've learned is that the road has been opened, but I will ask on the status of the actual flow of traffic.
Can you please
Yes,
check
we will do
that?
Yep.
Thank you. My question is, there was an attack on an oil tanker off Oman in the Arabian Sea, and two people were killed, one from Romania, one from the UK. This was apparently the first fatalities after years of assaults targeting shipping in the region, and it was also the worst known maritime violence so far in regional attacks on shipping since 2019. Does the Secretary General have any comment on this attack?
Well, we have no firsthand information regarding this attack. We've seen the same reports that you've probably seen. But I think the Secretary General has quite often called or stressed the importance of the need to protect seafarers. And I think this latest incident shows that, the increased need for that more than ever. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Edie. I have a question regarding Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. We know that the NATO is leaving the country as well as the United States. Now, my question is regarding the United Nations. Will the UN staff still be there? And do you have any procedures to make sure that they will be safe once everyone leaves? Thank you.
The United Nations has no intention of leaving Afghanistan. Our mission is still there. It's still active. Regarding security, we have security in place, but beyond that, as I'm sure you can understand, we can't provide any specific security details to you. Thank you. Yes.
To follow up on the question from how many people are part of the mission in Afghanistan, and will they be able to maybe protect women and young girls whose lives are going to be terrible?
So it's a political mission. It's no longer a peacekeeping mission. Of course, we have continued to call for the protection of human rights of women. We've said countless times that the deterioration of the security condition is, only worsening the plight of women and girls in the country. So we will continue to speak out.
I have another question. During your briefing, you said the UN is concerned, talking about an attack or something like that. Who is the UN? Because I thought the UN was composed of 193 countries. So who at the UN is concerned when something bad happens in the world?
I mean, we're speaking on behalf of the UN Secretariat, the Secretary General, but also on behalf of the various UN agencies working on these issues.
Do you think it's enough?
We are using our voice to corral the member states to take action. With, for example, on the situation in Afghanistan. Recently we had our special representative brief the Security Council. In a bid to galvanize action by the part of the member states to do more to help the people and prevent the security situation from worsening. Kristen.
Thanks. Just following up on Afghanistan, I'm wondering if you have any more specifics on non-government, anti-government elements. It says later in the release that Taliban was fighting with government forces nearby. Was it not Taliban that targeted
At this
these
point,
forces?
At
What
this
other anti-government elements are there?
At this point, this is all that we've been provided by the mission. If we have any clarification, we'll let you know. Thank you. I think we will go to the screen. Let's see. James?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great stuff. First, a couple of questions on Tigray, and seconding Edith's request for a briefing directly with Mr. Griffiths when he's back. As to my questions, Mr. Griffiths' trip is roughly at the same time as one by USAID Administrator Samantha Power, and they're basically pushing for the same kinds of thing in terms of humanitarian access and human rights. Is there any coordination between the two missions? And also on Tigray, Farhan told us a couple of days ago that 44 trucks carrying food were headed from Afar region up into Tigray. Are they there yet? Have they been able to cross into the Tigray controlled region?
On the second part of your question, my understanding as of 2 days ago was that, yes, indeed, they were on their way to Tigray. Let me double check and see whether they've arrived safely. On Mr. Griffith's meetings, any potential meeting with Samantha Power, we will let you know if and when such a meeting occurs.
And thanks so much. Can I just do one question on Yemen quickly?
Yes, of course.
There have been claims by the Houthi rebel group of significant military gains in Marib and Al-Baida regions in the last 24 or so hours. Do you have anything on that? Any reaction?
We have no firsthand reporting of these attacks, but I think it just underscores what the acting envoy is saying about the need to end this fighting so that we can get aid to those who need it the most. And I think Abdelhamid, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I have two questions. My first question is about a visit by the Algerian foreign minister to Ethiopia. Ethiopia is calling on Algeria to mediate between Ethiopia and Sudan and Egypt. So do you have any comment on that?
No.
And,
Go ahead.
Yes, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. We would welcome any efforts by any countries, especially those in the region, to help foster dialogue and decrease tensions regarding that issue. And your second question?
Thank you. My second question is, where is Mr. Tor Winston? He is nowhere to be found. Whatever is going on in the West Bank and Jerusalem, he is being absent, including the murder of a 12-year-old boy, as I mentioned yesterday to you. I mean, didn't he notice the volume of violations committed by the Israeli occupation forces? He has been silent completely. I didn't see, except the two congratulations, one to the Israeli new president and one on the Eid al-Adha holiday. Where is he?
Is continuing his work, as I'm sure you've seen. He has been continuing to speak out. He has been reporting to the Security Council on the deaths occurring in the region. His office is active. He is aware of these incidents taking place, but he continues his work and his office continues to be active. I'm sorry, you're muted.
Where is his body of New York?
I'm sorry?
Where is his voice?
He continues to be active. He continues to be active. You know, it's not, his work is not just about what we see on Twitter or the statements that he issues. You know, he is continuing his talks with the players in the region, with, you know, here with us in New York. I can assure you he is quite active. Thank you. And I see Iftikhar's had his hand up for a while.
Thank you, Iri. Questions about political and security situation in Afghanistan have been asked, but there is also a lot of flooding going on in Parman provinces and in other provinces. Is the United Nations providing relief to the flood-affected people? 80 people have been killed.
We'll check with our humanitarian colleagues to see if we can let you know exactly what the aid that we are providing to people there is. And Evelyn, do you have a question?
Yes, all my Afghan questions have been answered. There's been a human rights report on Libya in that mercenaries and contractors have been violating, have been raising havoc. Is there anything, do you have anything on that?
We've seen these reports, and we have called on, you know, the actors such as the ones that you mentioned to respect international law and fulfill international human rights obligations.
Thank you.
All right. Do we see is there anybody else? Okay. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. Thank you.